Hello and welcome to more talk about Stoicism. We're going through the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and we are really coming to the end of the Meditations. We ended up in book 12, and I found this an interesting statement. Section 6. Practice even what you have despaired of mastering. For lack of practice, the left hand is awkward for most tasks, but has a stronger grip on the bridle than the right. It is practiced in this. Practice is something we need all the time, and practice is something we need in every area of our life, I think, not just physical things. That's kind of what he's alluding to here, but I think we are to take this a little bit more figuratively as well. I think there is a lot more to be said for practice, and there's all kinds of things that immediately come to my mind when I think of practice. One thing is that we know that practice works, and we also know that practice makes you better at things. This is not magic because everybody knows it. If you practice something a lot, you become better at that thing. What is fascinating, I think, is that when it comes to something like Stoicism, it is very easy to practice it when everything in your life is going well. And then it's really easy to look back on these principles and say, yeah, the Stoics, they're so right. I know, they're absolutely right. And you just think about the things that you can control and the things you can't control and all that kind of stuff. But that's easy because everything is going well. And then it's really easy to be an armchair specialist and say, well, you should just think about what's within your control, or just think about, these things are, if you can't control it, then you don't have to worry about it. And if you can't change it, that's very easy from the armchair. Actually doing it when things are really happening to you and when you are really facing adversity is a lot harder. And that's why the Stoics themselves, at the very least Epictetus in the Discourses, if I'm not mistaken, continuously emphasize you need to practice this all the time. You cannot just do it and sort of be a good weather Stoic. That's not Epictetus's term. You cannot just do this when it is convenient to you. You have to practice these principles all the time, every time. Because then one day when you need it, it will come naturally to you. And if you don't practice it, you won't have it at the ready when you need it. And when you are in an unpleasant situation, a difficult situation, that is when I think you need these kinds of principles the most. You need the mental comfort of remembering the Stoic principles, remembering what I've just said, right? That some things are within your control, some things are not within your control. Can I do something about this? Can I not do something about this? Can I take a step back mentally, sort of cool down and not experience the unpleasantness of a negative emotion very fervently anyway? But that only comes through practice, and it only comes through a continuous repetition, not just in the bad times, but also in the good. And I've said this a couple times in this series of videos, but by now these are a lot of videos, so it's possible that you haven't seen them all. So let me very, very briefly repeat this aspect of it. The most important thing in Stoicism is virtue, and being virtuous and doing the right thing. But that extends to all kinds of things. That does not just extend to, I'm just making this up here, but giving a donation once in a while or helping someone out. That extends to small things too. That can extend to, if you have the choice between, say, this is a silly example, but I do that on purpose, between buying eggs and buying free-range eggs, that came out of chickens who were able to roam freely and were not stuffed into tiny cages. If you're going to buy eggs anyway, then the virtuous choice is, if you can afford it, to purchase free-range eggs, because those chickens have had a better life. If you're going to eat the eggs anyway, the chickens are in their facilities anyway, then you may as well pick that, which is the option that has given the animals the best life, right? That's part of virtue as well. Part of virtue is also not gossiping. Part of virtue is also trying to actually help people out. Part of virtue is, in other words, doing the right thing, but in everything. And that too is practice. And I think that when you genuinely practice those kinds of small things, the bigger things become easier. And Stoicism is always a struggle. It is. It really is. It's hard. Sorry, to continuously practice it and practice it well. Excuse me. Practice it well in a way where you really, really make progress. It's hard because we face so many struggles. And we face so many things, small things and bigger things. But only through practice, consistent practice, do we actually progress. Now, I think I've sufficiently made that point. So let me add, because people often indicate that they seem to enjoy that, let me add in a little bit of science to this as well. We do know that practice works from a scientific viewpoint. Obviously, everybody knows this. Practice makes you better at things. But practice actually reflects specific changes in you. For example, and I'm absolutely blanking on the names of the researchers right now, but there has been work that has shown, and I don't recall that meeting with any troubles in being replicated or something, there has been work that shows that even mentally practicing physical skills can improve those skills. So for example, sports people can capitalize on that. Let's say that you're playing tennis, which I don't, but let's say that you do. By imagining in as much detail as you can serving again and again and again and again, it turns out that you actually improve that skill a bit. Now, of course, the best way to improve it is to do it physically. But if that's not possible, if you want, say, an 8-hour plane ride, you can still do this. And it seems to work. It does seem to lead to specific changes in the brain that make you more effective at that thing, which I found a remarkable research finding. Imagine the implications that has for everyday life. Because it's not just motor skills. Imagine that, as I said, you keep practicing. But not just by actually doing things, but also by thinking about those things. Thinking about situations. And this is kind of where we get into the point of premeditatio malorum that we've talked about before. If you imagine the worst things that can happen, then in reality, typically it's not that bad, right? If I'm going to do X, and I imagine the worst possible outcome of X, well then whatever happens is either that worst outcome, and I've already anticipated it, or more likely, it's really not that bad. And then, it's not that bad, right? So, that kind of thinking, I believe, can really strengthen your understanding and your practice of Stoicism. And that I find very interesting. The second thing I wanted to say, this is probably obliquely related, but still it's interesting. One of the most cited papers in the field of neurocognitive aging is a paper by Patricia Reuter-Lawrence, who had young participants perform a language task while undergoing a brain scan. And as you would expect, you mainly see activation on the left side of the brain while the young people are performing that task. Why? Simply because in most people, our language centers are on the left side, and in some people are on the right, okay? But most often they're on the left. And then she had older adults, older adults, perform that same task. And what's interesting is that there was a little bit less activation on the left side. When you grow older, your brain deteriorates a bit. It's a normal part of aging. But what was so fascinating was that now these older adults were not just recruiting the left side of the brain, but also similar areas on the right side of their brain. So there was a mechanism of compensation in place that compensated a bit for the normal age-related decline in your brain. And for some reason I had to think of that here as well. That my issue is that I'm not exactly sure what point I'm trying to make, but I think what I was considering was, what if you can practice something so well that it becomes such second nature to you that even if you struggle, even if the situation becomes more difficult, you can sort of recruit things on both sides, so to speak, and it becomes more natural to you to respond in the way you want to respond in that specific situation. That may or may not have made sense, but I thought it was interesting. I hope this was interesting and relevant to you. I will gladly see you again next week for more talk about Stoicism. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about this, the practicing stuff. Bye.